Hi guys, I'm Nate from Recapped Now. Today, I'm going to recap a 2020 movie called The Midas Touch. A down-on-his-luck young man suffering from unrequited love acquires a mystical power that draws every woman he touches. But soon he realizes that evil forces are after his new talent. Felix Blythe arrives to their advertising agency and prepared to start his shift, but his attention is drawn to Sarah Walker, their new client. He immediately falls for her and keeps his gaze fixed on Sarah, completely unaware that his boss is standing beside him. Ron interrupts Felix's meditation and taunts him for being unpopular with ladies. Ron calls one of Felix's co-workers, Jane, and encourages her to mock him as well, making him feel even worse. After he finishes criticizing the unfortunate man, Jane takes over and inquires about Felix's weekend. Felix responds that he hung out with a female acquaintance, prompting Jane to query whether he slept with her. Felix is uncomfortable and avoids answering the question because he believes it violates his privacy. Instead, he asks her about her weekend, but Jane is no longer interested in speaking with him, so she goes. Felix returns alone to prepare for work, but Sarah approaches him and asks if he can help her carry her things. Felix stutters due to her proximity, but he enthusiastically accepts. While on their journey, Felix runs across a stranger who hands him a calling card. Immediately, the man flees as another man smacks him with a plant. Sarah checks on him, but Felix tells her that he's all right lugging the boxes. As he continues his walk, he checks the calling card and discovers it is for a self-help program. Soon later, they arrive at Sarah's house, and Felix swiftly places the boxes near the staircase. Felix marvels at the mansion's opulence, but his attention is diverted by Sarah, who is already climbing the stairs. Sarah takes him upstairs and introduces him to the three members of their religious cult, the Sisters of Light. After their introductions, Sarah tells her members to practice their worship songs. This surprises the three women, so Elena recommends that Felix assist them with their practice. Felix awkwardly admits that he is not a singer, but because the women are looking at him, he feels pushed to fulfill their request. During their rehearsal, Felix soulfully sings a stanza, but Nevinovat interrupts him and instructs him not to sing it. She stresses that it is their savior's responsibility, making him know that his actions are inappropriate. As a result, Felix leaves the room, attempting to avoid the trio's probing gaze. Sarah returns downstairs and offers Felix a drink, which he graciously takes. Sarah, taken aback by his civility, tells him to address her by her first name, and he joyfully agrees. Sarah assures him that after handing him the drink, she will go upstairs to see her husband. Felix is astonished after learning that his crush is married. Felix and Ron then shoot James Walker's political campaign advertisement. However, they have problems going throughout the shoot since James makes a mistake when presenting his message. Instead of admitting his shortcomings, James accuses Felix of distracting him. Because of his outburst, Ron advises that they move on and skip reading his script. This time, James will deliver his spontaneous speech, boosting his confidence. As the camera rolls, James begins strong, but as he goes, he becomes carried away and uses threatening language to convey his argument. Ron cuts him off, afraid he'll say more, and suggests a new strategy for his campaign. Sarah will appear in his video. Felix utilizes the clapperboard to indicate the start of the shoot, as Ron did. However, when he clamps it closed, he accidentally strikes Sarah, leading her to slap him. Later that evening, Felix attends a self-help lecture using the calling card he received earlier. The man is actually the sidekick of Sviatoslav Rao, a self-help guru. During one of his parts, he requests a volunteer to assist him in bedding the woman of their choice. Sviatoslav sweeps the audience, his attention settling on Felix. Sviatoslav immediately chooses him and asks Felix to the stage. When Sviatoslav first appears on stage, he asks Felix if he is a wimp, but a violent cough attacks him, causing the audience to chuckle. Felix states that he is not sick until his cough has subsided. With his response, Sviatoslav tells him to make a move on Amalia, his assistant. Felix, despite his reservations, agrees and makes every effort to carry the conversation. However, Because he is an uncomfortable man who has little experience chatting to women, he becomes the show's laughingstock. When things became extremely awkward, Sviatoslav ended their chat and began to analyze the previous event. Felix has committed numerous blunders, prompting him to wonder how he manages to live that way. Felix rushes to a bar to drink away his embarrassment when a man surrounded by women walks in. Tired of the attention, the man urges the others to leave him alone for a time so he may enjoy a drink. Finally, alone, he orders a drink and says he'll never get accustomed to the attention. Contrary to his beliefs, Felix envies the man's circumstances, believing it is not difficult to accomplish. However, the man says that he thinks that way because he hasn't experienced it. This offends Felix, but the man quickly recognizes his error and apologizes. Then he reveals that the flock of women does not leave him easy, and he sees it as a misfortune. Still, Felix considers it a blessing. As a result, the man tells him that he used to believe that same, which led to his current level of power. When Felix's confusion persists, the man explains that his power can be transmitted to someone else. The power can be successfully handed to his successor, as long as the present bearer has thoroughly warned him of the dangers it entails. Felix inquires if he may possess it, and the man thinks about it for a moment. Then he instructs him on the permanency of the power unless he finds someone eager to purchase it. Felix eagerly confirms, but the stranger continues to caution him. Regardless of what he says, Felix is thrilled to be the new bearer of his power. As a result, the man performs the ritual, and Felix adheres to it religiously. After a few seconds, the man reveals that Felix now has the power. To put it to the test, the man touches the waitress, but she pulls her hand away and taunts him. The man bids Felix farewell with joy, but Felix wonders what he should do next. The man assures him that he'll figure it out, but reminds him that his power manifests when he touches someone. The next day, on his way to work, Felix runs into several women, who immediately fall in love with him. Without wasting time, Felix engages in an intimate encounter with everyone he touches. However, as he develops in his self-discovery, the flock of women gets violent towards him, so he attempts to wear a glove to prevent his stimulating contact. Despite his best attempts, they defeat and attack him. Later that night, a fatigued and battered Felix attempts to return home, but the crowd of ladies catches him again, stopping him in his tracks. They want to share a moment with him, but Felix declines since he wants to rest. Nonetheless, one of them begs to make love with him, but he declines, emphasizing that he is not their toy. He tries to explain that he needs to relax, but the women insist that they can care for him. Felix does not have the energy to entertain them, so he threatens to use his gloves and wetsuit on them. When the group begs him not to use them, Felix takes the opportunity to make the group aware of the pressure he is currently under. As a result, he demands that they give him a pause to recover energy and time to understand his newfound abilities. Because of his good reasoning, the group eventually gives in, but they give him a day to heal, so they may continue their fun the next day. The next day at work, Ron examines Felix's face and believes that he was beaten up. This prompts him to inquire about Felix's activities the previous night, to which the man responds that he spent time with his pals. Ron uses this as an opportunity to mock him, asking if his pals are female, which Felix proudly confirms. Though surprised, Ron continues to mock him, but Felix ignores him. Ron pauses abruptly, realizing that Felix's conquests have paid him a visit. Felix looks out the window and realizes that Ron is telling the truth. Felix, now anxious, rapidly packs his possessions as his visitors increase. When Felix exits the room, a swarm of ladies rushes inside and chases him down, forcefully pushing Ron. A while later, Felix pays a visit to Professor Jones to discuss the curse he once believed to be powerful. Professor Jones, admittedly, is fascinated by his case. As a result, he undertakes study and discovers a Sumerian mythology in which Uruk the Great acquires the power to charm the woman of his dreams with the help of his spiritual advisor Saki. According to Professor Jones, Uruk married the lovely Ashihara and had 14 children. However, Uruk was thought to have died of a heart attack after suing for alimony against his wife. After presenting the mythology, Professor Jones indicates that Giacomo Casanova, Don Juan, and the Beatles might be the curse's successors. However, he stresses that these have yet to be validated. Regardless, Felix feels honored since he believes he is continuing a long heritage. Felix expresses his gratitude to Professor Jones and leaves. Felix is unaware that Ron has followed him and eavesdropped on their chat as they leave Professor Jones's house. The next day, Felix flees for his life as another swarm of ladies pursues him. Sviatoslav nearly collides with Felix, but his sidekick manages to pull him to the side of the road. When awareness sets in, the two question how Felix became popular with the ladies, especially after seeing how awkward he was on their show a few days before. Sviatoslav confidently claims that he must have learned how to attract women from their performance. His companion laughs and refutes his statements. A woman appears out of nowhere and sprints past them, knocking Sviatoslav off his feet. Meanwhile, Felix is preoccupied with his duties when Jane approaches him and teases him about his sudden popularity among the ladies. However, she boldly states that his charm would not work on her because she is fed up with him. Because of her challenge, Felix touches her knee, causing her to feel immense pleasure. While she is still under his control, Felix asks her if she needs anything more, and she reveals that Ron wants him to come to his office to discuss an urgent topic with him. Ron joyfully welcomes his employer and expresses surprise at Felix's popularity. Moving on with his mission, he explains his intention to elevate him since he is impressed by his charisma. Felix accepts his offer, but explains he has become bored of dealing with ladies lately. When Ron hears this, he insists on accepting the job, especially since someone close to him will visit and they will discuss his future. Furthermore, he believes that with Felix's talent and ideas, they will be unstoppable. When Felix remains silent, Ron enthusiastically informs him that he will show him something cool. Ron brings Felix inside the secret compartment of his sofa and encourages his subordinate to enter. Later, he instructs him to insert his hand through the hole in the sofa's board. Unbeknownst to Felix, Ron locks his hand in preparation to lure their visitor. Felix tries to argue, but Ron has already made up his mind and is covering his hand to hide it from their visitor's eyes. Sarah walks into Ron's office a few seconds later, and the man makes an attempt to approach her. She quickly dodges and warns him that his deeds will lead to his death. Sarah, not wanting to prolong the conversation, asks about James's campaign posters. Ron immediately grabs the posters and lets her judge their draft. She finds it a little rudimentary, but she tells him that James would enjoy it. Ron changes the question to her, asking what she likes, and then makes a move on her. Sarah attempts to avoid him, but she accidentally touches Felix's hand, which makes her feel thrilled. Ron finally gets the reaction he wants and makes love to her, as Felix's heart aches from his boss's betrayal. That night, Felix returns home disheartened and depressed after being exploited against his will. The most agonizing part is when Ron uses him to make a move on the woman he wants. The next day, Felix is covered in the news due to frequent sightings of him being pursued by ladies. As a result, media observers believe it is just a campaign gimmick because Felix works for a public relations firm. Unlike the critics, Felix's agency disputes the charges. The news also shows footage of Felix being chased by a bunch of women who want to touch him. Because of this cover, James becomes intrigued in Felix's power, which motivates him to gain it in order to achieve a spotless victory in the election. Similarly, Ron discovers Felix's condition and believes that running away from such a blessing is a waste. Now motivated, Ron resolves to locate a more appropriate recipient of Felix's abilities. At the neighborhood bar, Sviatoslav and his sidekick are equally interested in Felix's skill, believing that their show helps him gain self-esteem. Sviatoslav promises to take Felix's power and preserve it for himself, believing that this will increase his influence. Later that evening, Felix goes to a bar in search of his replacement. The first individual he approaches denies his offer outright, believing Felix is a fake. Moving on to his next target, Felix attempts to start up a discussion with an elderly man, only to learn that he is simply depressed. As a result, he pours a drink for himself and considers another way to convey his curse. Felix performs the routine while dancing to the music, hoping that someone may follow suit. However, his attempts are fruitless since a customer ignores him, believing Felix is making a move on him. Unbeknownst to Felix, Sviatoslav and his sidekick are in the same room as him, disguised and observing his behavior discreetly. Felix finds another target and persuades him to undertake the ritual, assuring him it will help him attract any lady he desires. Gladly, the man accepts and mimics Felix's movements. However, when Felix directs him to remark that possessing all the ladies in the world may give him problems, his enthusiasm wanes. Felix, perplexed, asks him why he refuses to continue, to which the man responds that he does not believe such a thing. Left with no alternative, he urges the man to follow his lead. While they are performing the ceremony, Felix unknowingly touches a woman who is simply passing by. As a result, the woman disrupts Felix's preparations. The next day, Felix overhears James and Ron talking about him. He discovers that the two intend to take his curse for personal benefit. Ron has even uncovered and demonstrated the ritual to James. Felix appears, attempting to confront them and capturing the men's attention. James conducts the ceremony in front of him, expecting to receive his curse. Then James approaches Ron's secretary and touches her. Instead of swooning over him, the secretary slaps him across the face. As a result, James yells at Ron and gives him a 24-hour deadline to get the power working. Now alone with his boss, Felix confronts Ron about uncovering the ritual, prompting the man to admit that he had eavesdropped on them when Felix visits Professor Jones. Felix becomes enraged, so Ron tries to justify his actions by claiming that he did it solely to protect him. Still, Felix yells in frustration, leaving him to get to the point. Ron persuades him that they must collaborate with James in order to succeed professionally. As Ron leaves, Felix notices Professor Jones inside the office and approaches him. He wants to know how to get rid of the curse, but he's unsure how to do so securely after discovering that some others want to. Professor Jones calmly proposes that he allow himself to convey his curse to wicked individuals. He clarifies that once a terrible person receives the curse, he will experience an automatic reversal effect. As a result, the successor will not appeal to women. Rather, they will harbor strong feelings against him. Felix gratefully thanks Professor Jones and departs, now knowing more about the curse. Unbeknownst to Felix, Sviatoslav and his sidekick are waiting for him outside to abduct him. Felix wakes up and finds himself in a bathtub, with Elena bathing him. Sarah suddenly captures his attention, showing her curiosity with his touch. Sarah, eager to try it, joins him in the bathtub and encourages him to touch her. Felix readily complies, and his touch provides the pleasure she seeks. Sarah, on the other hand, expresses her plans for his power, which raises Felix's suspicion. This causes Felix to stroke her face with both of his hands, giving her a great deal of pleasure. As a result, Sarah dies. At that point, Sviatoslav and his sidekick appear, drawing Felix's attention. Sviatoslav ultimately admits that he founded the Sisters of Light cult and is their self-proclaimed messiah. Felix, perplexed, recalls that Sviatoslav conducts self-improvement workshops, which the man clarifies is his day job. To get right to the issue, Sviatoslav expresses his desire to acquire Felix's authority, feeling it is his destiny. Felix agrees without a fight to give it up because he is no longer interested. As Felix teaches Sviatoslav the ceremony, Ron interrupts them. He claims that he sold his power to James so that he might win the elections. To persuade Sviatoslav to give up attaining power, he lists the potential rewards he could receive if James wins. Regardless, Sviatoslav believes he must be Felix's heir if he wishes to be adored. When Ron refuses to back down, Sviatoslav stabs him without mercy. Then he resumes the ritual with Felix, but as he prepares to pronounce the magical line, he becomes sidetracked. This time, James appears and asserts that he requires the curse. Since Sviatoslav refuses, James strikes him. However, Sviatoslav's sidekick comes to his aid and takes James's life. Now that they have no one to distract them, Sviatoslav instructs Felix to continue their rite. Sviatoslav completes it successfully and receives the curse a few seconds later. Felix, on the other hand, is overjoyed that he is no longer under the curse. Moments later, Sviatoslav meets his followers and eagerly wants to test his abilities. Sviatoslav is perplexed when their smiles fade into fury upon contact. Suddenly, his followers encircle him and launch a ferocious onslaught. In the end, his imagined cult meeting devolved into a brutal slaughter. Please do hit that like button if you enjoyed the recap. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more movie recaps. Stay tuned for our next cinematic adventure, and until then, happy watching.